Can you hear me? Because I'm not a very loud voiced person. So just let me know if you can't hear me, people at the end. Okay. Is it the next speaker? I hope I can shout over her. So, hello everybody. Thank you for being here this morning. I'm Sam Chandrashekar. I'm the Global Accessibility Lead of D2L. D2L, which has a stand right behind you, and I'll be there all day in case you want to catch up conversation. So I'm the Global Accessibility Lead at D2L, and what that means is that I make sure that the educational experiences that we craft in D2L can be used by everyone. Everyone, regardless of their differences in age or gender or culture or any of that. And I do believe that we are an education company that also makes technology. There's a context to why I'm saying that, and there's a context to why I'm going to talk to you for a minute about my connection with teaching. I am an adjunct professor with 3 universities, and just on 11th I was at the University College Dublin as an external examiner for a PhD student doing a PhD project on XR and autism. There are several colleagues of mine who are also teaching. The reason being, you need to have lived experience in teaching and learning to be able to build inclusive learning experiences. That's what we believe. So what you have over here by way of title is Redefining Inclusive Learning, Developing the NextGen Leaders. Now I need to explain each of these, right? I will be doing it on the way when I go, but this one? Okay. Yeah? He said I could do it anyway. Oh yeah, there it is. Sorry, pardon me, till I get used to it. So I just wanted to introduce the agenda first. We'll start with looking at what is meant by NextGen leaders. And in a nutshell, it'll be about traits like empathy, continuous learning, right, and independent learning. And how can you redefine inclusive learning? How can you make inclusive learning possible in such a way that you can develop all these traits in your employees, your members, or whoever you are associated with in terms of teaching and learning? So my idea today is to bring to you 2 concepts that we have developed at D2L. One of them is actually a process for inclusive design of learning, and that's the IDEA process. And the other one is actually a system, how you can set up a learning system in such a way that it's inclusive. So I'm going to go and explain each of these. These are transferable. You could take them with you and implement them wherever you are. And our goal is to create those next-gen leaders. And there are 2 ways you can operationalize that. At the organizational level, you need to foster an inclusive learning culture. And at the individual level, you need to promote the spirit of lifelong learning, which is also called as learning integrated life. Are you able to hear it all, what I'm saying? Oh, it's too loud, too loud. Please. No, it's done. I'm going to stand here and I'm going to do the arrows. No technology, because that doesn't seem to work for me. So, as we start off, I wanted to bring you a quote from Jane Hart. She's a famous author and a famous data buff. She's done a number of research survey studies. One of the studies that she did recently involved 1,000 organizations, and what she wanted to find out was what are their current and short-term future goals in learning. So what she found is that in the short term, organizations are interested in creating learning content and learning programs, but in the short-term future, they're looking for development, developing the people, because you cannot scale. You cannot scale by just adding more and more courses and more ways people can learn unless you bring about changes in the people. They become more independent, they become more inclined to learn continuously, and that is called development. We're going to talk a little bit more about the development part of it. Oops. Oh, thank you. My colleagues know that my throat is just going. So NextGen leaders. NextGen doesn't have anything to do with age. It's not about the Gen Z or young people. It's about all of us. And leadership is not in the title. It's a mindset. So these are traits that I'm going to talk about. So NextGen leadership is a trait. It's about creating people who are empathetic, who care for people around them who are also learning, who are socially responsible, and who can learn independently, and they want to learn continuously. I wanted to say this all over again because it's important. Like I said, I'm going to give you two tools. One tool is called the idea process, and the other tool is called the online learning stack system. And I'm doing this so that you can yourself redefine what you are doing in your organization as inclusive learning. IDEA stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility. All of you would know about DEI, right? DEI is such an important thing for organizations. It doesn't include accessibility, which is a shame. When you think of diversity, you don't think of disability. When I say you, not you, when people think of diversity, they don't include disability, which is something we are raising a hue and cry about. DEI, add that A there, add the accessibility there. That's a good idea. And I'm going to expand on each one of these. First, inclusion. What does inclusion mean? Inclusion is about minimizing or mitigating mismatch. And mismatch is between the needs of the user and what the system can offer, whatever be the system. It could be a product, it could be a process, it could be a website, anything. And when disability is involved, we tend to think that disability is about the person. It's not about the person, it's about this mismatch that happens. And accessibility is about reducing that mismatch. When we try to include people with disabilities in our inclusive design process, we can create for constraints. We can create to meet constraints, and that is going to help more and more people get included in our learning endeavors. Not only that, when we create with people who have constraints, it also becomes a more innovative, a more creative process, because the resulting designs would not have been possible if we had designed with people who did not face those constraints. Diversity. What is diversity and why do we care? Diversity is simply the whole humanity. It's about all the differences. And why should we care about learning and diversity? It's because everybody must learn. Everybody should be able to learn. Learning can be life transformative, and nobody should be left behind. But when you want to create a system for people to learn, different people have different needs, right? Diversity means different needs. And when you want to design for different needs, if you give everybody the same thing, it's not going to work. There are two pictures here. On the top is a picture where there are 4 people with 4 different body structures, and you're giving the same bicycle to all 4 of them. At the most, one of them might be able to ride, and one of them may not be able to ride at all. This is to show that equality really doesn't work. When you have differences in your employees or your members or whoever, and you're trying to design an education or learning system, you have to be mindful of the individual needs of those people, and you have to design to meet those needs. When you design to make different bicycles for each one of them, then all of them are able to go on the road. How do you do that? How do you design for different needs? You can do that by providing choices. If you provide choices, then whoever wants whichever design can pick their own. And how can you make your design more impactful? If you design in the company of people who have a disability, what you design is going to be usable by many, many more people. It's going to be more impactful. There are so many examples here of when you design for a person with one disability, it's going to help many more people. I'm going to take just one example. When you design a video with captions, when you make a video with captions, you have primarily a person who's hard of hearing or deaf in mind, but the captioned video, if you have it as part of a lesson, is also usable by a student who had a ear surgery, or a student who had whose partner is sleeping, or who is sitting in a library and reading. In so many other situations, it's going to be useful. So this idea process, I'll just summarize it. You want to be inclusive in your design because you want to reach every learner. And how you do the design is to recognize diversity that's there in the learners, and you enable equity by providing choices, and you enhance the impact of the design by adding people with disabilities in the design process. Next, we come to how do you make that system that's going to work for everybody, right? You would probably have a learning system which might be, say, a learning management system, let us say. What are the various things that are required to be kept in mind? We call this the online learning stack. The online learning stack is made up of technology, pedagogy, content, and community. So how we explain that is the technologies that you use should enable independent and effective learning, and the system should also facilitate teaching or training in such a way that it reaches everyone. A very popular way of doing this is to practice the universal design for learning principles. And the content should always be accessible. If you have a very good system, but the content is not accessible, then it's not going to be useful. Likewise, you need a community. You need a community for people to talk to and to learn laterally. Without that, the efforts for the organization is going to be way, way more. So what this all means is that over and above using the idea process, you should also be mindful of having a system which is compatible with different technologies that are working, is able to provide training in such a way that everybody can receive it well, is able to provide content that's accessible, and provides a community for people to learn together. Why are we doing it? Why are we talking about IDEA and online learning stack? Because we have a purpose. We have a purpose of meeting that redefining inclusive learning for developing next-gen leaders, right? So there are two ways in which you can operationalize this. At the organizational level, the organizations need to try to foster a culture of inclusive learning. And at the individual level, we need to encourage the learners to develop a learning integrated life. Let's look at what each one of these is. Fostering inclusive learning culture. At the top of it all, the employer should be committed. I have here a story about my own company. Our top management is totally invested in learning for the employees, and learning is promoted, inclusive learning is promoted across the company. We have developed a system for that, a platform for that, and we've developed partnership with other academic institutions so that all employees in our company are able to learn. There is a very generous budget every year. We can learn anything we want. We get 2 days off in a year to learn. And every time somebody completes a course or a program, there's a lot of celebration, and people are really happy to go and learn. And this also creates a learning community, and that's what I was talking about. So for the individuals, what does this mean? What do individuals have to do? They have to also become motivated to keep learning all through their life. There's a reason for this in a working context, because gone are the days when you go off to a management school and study for 2 years and come back. You don't have time for that these days. You need to keep upskilling and reskilling very often, very quickly. Things are changing so fast. So learning has to happen in the organization while working. And whatever is learned has to be applied right away into the work that people are doing. So individuals have to adopt a learning integrated life. With that, these are the takeaways that I wanted to give you today. Think about the idea process and try to use it. Try to bring in people with constraints into whatever design you're making for your learning systems or your courses, and set up the system in such a way that there's accessibility and inclusion at every level in that stack. Technology should be accessible, pedagogy should be accessible, content should be accessible, and there should be a community which is also accessible, which allows everybody to come in without any constraints. And if you do that, and if the top management is mindful of creating that inclusive organizational culture, then all the employees, all the members, if you're an association, all of them are going to be motivated to build learning into their own lives, to become continuous learners, to become independent learners, and they learn empathy from the people around them. And did you wave? Okay. I told her to wave when the time is up, but I didn't look at her. That's the joke. We're at the end of what I had planned. And it frankly didn't go the way I had planned, because I'm shouting my lungs out and I'm still very doubtful if you heard me, and that kept me so distracted I just couldn't think. So what I suggest is I'm going to be sitting here. I consult. Today, if anybody is making an appointment with me, no charge. It's free. So come by, talk to me. We'll set up meetings for future. I love to talk about learning. I've been in the industry, I've been in the non-profit, I've been in academia for a long, long time, 17 years. I love teaching and learning. I'm passionate about accessibility and inclusion. Very widely networked. I love to consult. Yeah. So everybody welcome. But you please ask any questions if you have right now. Questions?
How do you determine what makes your content accessible?
How do you determine what makes your content accessible? There are two parts, I'll tell you. Some people think that you have to do universal design, right? Make it fully accessible for everybody in this whole wide world, which is a good idea. It's not practicable. As organizations, commercial or non-commercial, it's not going to be feasible. What I would say, if you know the cohort of people, if there's only employees, if it's a closed section of people, have people in that cohort use that and tell you whether they're able to use it well. Because it's not just about a screen reader user using it. It could be neurodiversity related needs. There are so many differences, cultural, first English as a second language, right? Your academic level when you came into the job, so many. So I would always say, if you have a closed group of people learning, bring some people from your own cohort to test it, if it's good. Otherwise, the standard process is to pass the content through accessibility testing tools, automated tools, and then also bring in some people who use assistive technologies. At D2L, we have a partnership with a company called Fable, and Fable has a community of people with disabilities, more than 100. So at every stage, you're here to say something? Oh, okay. Okay. So Zain can bring the mic to you if you have a question. So what we do is at every stage of our process, research, design, development, testing, triaging for support, we bring in people with disabilities into our process. That's how we operate. Yeah.
I'm going to go. What do you find?
I will repeat
what
it, no
gets
worry.
in the way of designing inclusive learning? Because I find as a learning professional, this is what I want to do, this is what I need to do. But what barriers, what gets in the way of people like me doing it?
What gets into the way?
What gets in the way?
You're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking.
Okay. And you are?
I'm Phil from Prescient.
So Phil from Passion wants to know what gets in the way of being inclusive, creating inclusive learning. Ourselves, our attitudes, the attitudes of people around us. If you have somebody providing budget, the attitudes of those people. Attitudes need to be managed first. Why it's important to include everybody. And then, of course, a lot of education can help change those attitudes. There are unconscious biases as well that we have, which we should learn to recognize and overcome. Anybody can think of anything else. What stands in the way of inclusive learning in your own experience? You tried to do inclusive design, but you were not able to. Lack of time, right? You want to do it, but you don't have time. That's another thing that could happen. How to do it? You don't know the process. There's some process, and there's a lot more. We can talk if you want to. Yeah. So, yeah, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah. And I don't want to overwhelm you by saying, you there, come on, questions. You can think through the day. I'll be here. If you have any questions, you could come over. My full name is Sambhavi Chandrashekar. I don't know, we put up Sam, I think. If you search for Sam Chandrashekar, you won't find that in LinkedIn. It's SAMBHAVI. I don't know how to give it to you. So, yeah, you could connect and then we can talk because it's about practical problem solving. These are not theories that we are talking about here. We're talking about real organizations, successful employees, successful members. How do we promote? Because learning is so important these days. Learning at work to upskill, to reskill is absolutely critical these days. So how to make that possible? What kind of system should you get? And the more inclusive the system you procure is, the easier your job. That's it. Nothing else. I could talk for 2 hours about how D2L's LMS has every one of these criteria because this is our process. This is the way we design our systems. But I'm not supposed to talk shop. This is a thought leadership. Okay. Okay, thank you very much.